that's in progress all the time. We're always learning and sharing and growing, and we tend to be a little competitive at times too, which is excellent because it drives progress. I am working my way through this year in preparation to become the next president, January 1st next year. And in this process this year, you know, it's a lot of collaboration, and there are a number of different initiatives that we are following through. One of them being to elevate the state of our volunteers, increase communication, and find some wonderful roles for so many people who are interested in volunteering. There are so many opportunities, and this webinar is going to address, I know one point it will address is how we are doing that and what you can expect moving forward. I'm thrilled to be a member of the PMI New York City chapter, and I hope that you feel the enthusiasm too.
Okay, Holly, thank you very much. Holly has been with the chapter for a number of years. I've known Holly for at least, I know, 3, 4, maybe 5 years. I think that you all know that I've had a lot of activity with the New York City chapter. It goes back all the way to 1991 when I was president, from then until 2001. So I've got a lot of background and know a lot of different things about volunteering and what it takes to be a volunteer. With that, I would like to take a minute if I can get Pam. Pam, if you're there and we can hear you, would you just say a few words, introduce yourself and your role and how you're helping the volunteers and your experiences so far?
Absolutely, and thank you very much, Frank and Holly. For everyone out there, my name is Pam Young. I'm the Vice President of Membership at PMI New York City, and prior to this role, I was the Vice President of Membership at the Southern New England chapter, so if anybody has lived in the Connecticut, New England region. It really is a great place to volunteer. I know it sounds like we're being cheerleaders for it, but I have to say I've not seen more passion from the volunteers to just learn from each other and get the most out of the experience, and to Holly's point, to challenge each other. There's nothing like a number of type A people who are used to driving projects. We all have a tendency to want to get it done our own way, and we also do it together because we know that we are all matrix managed to each other. To Holly's point, we're looking to improve the overall volunteer experience, you know, by way of statistics. I just pulled these up before. Let's see, we have 140 active volunteers. We have 36 open positions, about 2,700 members, and 1,684 have PMPs. So there's a number of programs that you can participate in and then maybe volunteer for, such as mentoring or PRP study programs, in addition to all of the operations and outreach programs that are just really great places to meet people, wonderful places to network, which is one of our biggest pluses, I think, of the size of the chapter and the diversity of the chapter that we have. And so, you know, we look forward to people getting more involved and also feeding back to us what we can do to make the experience better. Back to you, Frank.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I just want to go over a couple of things here to kind of give you a little bit of an orientation about volunteering, volunteer leaders, and so on. Now, I don't know the exact count because it does change now and again, but the last time I checked, they did have something like 94 volunteers. Many of them are active, and I know that we have several that are waiting. But I'm going to ask Kay, who is assisting me here, to show my first slide, which is slide number 3, which says thinking differently. And I think this is an important bit of information that we should share. Chapter leaders must continuously develop new ideas and enhance programs that will engage members and attract new leaders. Now, I'm going to assume that some of you out there, many of you might be PMPs, and you know something about stakeholder management, and PMI's buzzword is engage stakeholders. So that's what we are trying to do, and that's part of what this webinar is about, engaging the stakeholders, the members, volunteers. There's going to be a little bit of background noise, and I have to apologize for that. But leadership teams that display enthusiasm, sincere commitment, and remain connected to the membership will attract qualified volunteers. And that's what we're attempting to do here. So that's kind of like a stage. Now, go to the next slide, Kay. It's going to say attitude. Attitude. Now, the thing here is, when it comes to volunteers, a lot of us might think that it's actually difficult to get volunteers, but it isn't. And we know we have many what we'll call volunteers in waiting. Right? I think that the term that Pam had used for volunteers was that we have homeless volunteers. And we understand that, and we're going to work with you to find those positions that will meet your needs. The attitude has to come from the leadership, and specifically, if you look at that second item, it says, if your attitude is, I can't imagine that someone will volunteer for this, well, don't expect to get any volunteers. So we all have to show, and we have to believe, and we have to have a lot of passion for the positions that we are in. And I think that Pam, knowing Pam and knowing Holly, are two people for sure that have a tremendous passion for the chapter. The other thing is that we have to absolutely positively set some clear expectations so that you know what you're getting into when you become a volunteer. So these are some of the fundamentals that we need to think about. Now, if you go to the next slide, Kay, it's going to say making a connection. So what it says is if members do not have time, it's because they aren't seeing the value of getting involved compared to their other options for the same time. And we know that you have options for that other time. You have family, friends, you have work, you have a number of things. And what we're doing, in a sense, is we're competing for some of that disposable time that you might have. So we have to find things that are going to make it very attractive. Now, as was mentioned by Pam a few minutes ago, we're kind of a matrix organization, but we're also largely a virtual organization, and we do not do many things where we are actually together. Everybody has different jobs, different locations, different boroughs. So it becomes a challenge that we have to find ways to reach out to 2,700 plus members, many of which cannot seem to find ways to get to meetings. And same thing with volunteers. We need to give them meaningful work that will attract them to the chapter and to see perceived high value. So those are some of the things that we have to do as chapter leaders. Now, if you go to the next slide, okay, it's going to say caution. Don't make volunteering look like a backup plan, and this is very critical. What we don't want is to have, well, I don't really want to do that. Why don't we just get a volunteer to do it since nobody else will? That's really the wrong attitude here. What we're looking for is people who want to step up to it because they're going to see not only that it's useful for them, but if you think about something that all of us have heard in the past, it's called WIIFM, which is what's in it for me. So we understand that no one really does anything for nothing, that there's always some driving force. And when people volunteer, it's because they want to make a difference, they want to make a contribution, and they want to feel good about it. So their return is actually feeling good about being a volunteer, that they have actually made a difference. Okay, now, if we go to the next slide, Kay, it's going to say the challenge. Our challenge is, and Pam knows this very well, is to find not only the right people, but we also have meaningful work for the people who are setting up to become volunteers. And it says there, stop the revolving door. And this is something that we want to be aware of pretty much all the time. And that is, if we have new people coming in, and then they become disillusioned because they are not getting a meaningful value out of an assignment, then they'll simply walk out. And what we have is a revolving door. So we are at a point right now where we have a lot of volunteers. We do not want people to become disillusioned, so we are now looking to actively find things that volunteers can do individually and in teams. One example of a great opportunity for volunteering is the upcoming New York City Chapter Professional Development Day, which has a pretty sizable team right now. I think it's got about 18 people on it, and there's a chance that we can use more. We also need volunteers to organize things like these webinars, to do workshops, to help with the networking, the outreach, and things like that. So we are actually going through that process to find ways to make that more meaningful for the volunteers. Now, if we go to one more slide, Kay, it's strategies for success. And this is what I think the message of this particular meeting is about. Okay, if you look at the slide, the leaders of your chapter have 3 major mandates. Identify the needs of the organization stakeholders, the members, clients, volunteers, even the sponsors. Okay, mobilize the volunteer resources in your chapter to meet those needs, and then motivating and inspiring by helping volunteers to energize themselves through these effective and authentic leadership. And that's what I've been striving to do. We talk about leadership all the time, and what we're looking to do is find a way to show the membership and the volunteers that we are paying attention to the needs, and we're constantly doing surveys, and we're looking for ways to place the volunteers in the appropriate positions. Now, one more slide, PK, if you go to Strategies for Success, it's going to say the ultimate strategy is to make sure that each and every volunteer has a great experience working with the organization. And one of the things that we can do to make sure that we do that is to conduct what is known as a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and focus on our strengths and our opportunities, but then find people that can help us with our weak areas and the items that could create some negative situations for the chapter. So we have a very broad view of things to look at. So these are the kinds of things that I think are important. And if you go to, okay, this is going to be slide number 11, under Strategies for Success. It's going to say a critical factor. And the critical factor is the experiences of your current volunteers will determine the level of difficulty in obtaining new volunteers. And these are the kinds of things that I wanted you to be aware of as potential volunteers, and those of you that are interested in stepping up to new positions in the chapter. Okay, we're going to have opportunities. One of the things that we need to do is for each of the leaders to establish a succession plan. In order to do that, we have to find volunteers that are willing to step up to it and make that commitment. So let me just talk a little bit about commitment, because I think that there is some misconception a little bit about what volunteers do, what they are. The important thing is that if you step up to a volunteer position, you're making a commitment. And if you're making a commitment, that means that we are relying on you to do what you said you were going to do. Okay? Now, in the past, and I've been around with PMI for a very long time, part of our experience is that people do step up to positions. They do want to volunteer, but then work, family, and many other things get in the way, and they simply say, you know what, well, I can't do it anymore, and they just simply stop. And they leave us in a hole. And we really, really, absolutely, positively can't function with volunteers who are only partially committed. We have to make a full commitment. So what we're asking, and we're going to make sure we continue to ask volunteers, is that if you are volunteering, we want to be clear about what the job is. We want to make sure that they know why we know them, why we need them, that it is an important function, and that they have to step up to it. So if you don't have the time to do say like a board position or a program manager position or a director position, then it's really important for you not to do that, to take something that you can spend less time on. There will be volunteer activities that will take maybe an hour a month, and there will be volunteer activities that are going to take 20 hours a week, depending on the position that you get into. And it's our job as the leaders to make sure that people understand what's involved in that commitment. And then when the volunteer steps up, we want to make sure that they understand that we really absolutely are counting on them to fulfill that assignment. So somebody told me a long time ago that once you have stepped up and volunteered, you are no longer a volunteer. You're actually someone who is going to do this work. So I think that part of this session is to, number one, thank you all for your interest. Number two is tell you that we are committed to find meaningful volunteer work for you. And then number three is also to make sure that volunteers understand that they are making a commitment. And together with teamwork and an understanding of our mission and our vision and the various programs that are out there that we can actually make this chapter succeed and grow. A few more things here, and then we can open it up to some questions, or Holly and Pam may have some additional items to talk about. Would be under our strategies for success, again, is that we have to clearly define what we believe the skills are that are needed to handle the volunteer position. And we want the volunteers to step up and say, you know, I have those skills and I do these things. Things like technology, expertise in event planning, managing documentation, doing financial analysis. I mean, these are things that we as a chapter need, because we're a large chapter. We have more than 2,700 members, and we have a multi-$1,000 yearly budget. Time requirements. We have to, Kay, if you put up slide number 13 under strategies for success, it's referencing some of the things I'm talking about. Time requirements, and it says don't hold back here, tell it like it is. We have to let you know that there is a time commitment depending on what you step into. And you know, Holly, as president-elect, is beginning to realize that there's an awful lot that has to be learned from PMI GOC, that's the Global Operations Center, and all of the things that are needed to actually operate and run the chapter. So, and duration, do we know how long it's going to be? Is it short-term, long-term? Is it 1 year, 2 years, 1 month? You know, these are the kinds of things that we have to be clear about when we invite volunteers and we step up to ask volunteers to step in. So those are some of the things that I just wanted you to be aware of, and I thought that having a webinar would at least reach out to people who don't get a chance to get to all the meetings. They don't get to hear from the other leadership, like the other board members and so on, and I wanted to make that opportunity. One more thing, and I'm going to ask Holly if she has any comments, and Pam, is that when you step into a volunteer position, depending on what it is, we have to make sure that you are aware that might be some travel conditions or considerations. You may have to travel to a different location as president, as a board member. There is travel involved. There might be travel involved for directors. There are some on-call situations depending on what you volunteered for. If it's an event, if you're managing the website or some part of the website or technology, there could be a phone call and then, you know, kind of an inconvenient time. There's also the need for attending meetings and also for planning for your own succession, things like that. So those are kind of the things that I wanted you to be aware of. And the message actually really is that we hear you in terms of your need to have a value-adding assignment. Pam has made it very clear multiple times that I've got volunteers that are waiting. We certainly want you to have patience with us as we find meaningful jobs for you, and that we're going to continue to do that because we really need to. There's no chapter, no PMI chapter can actually function and exist without volunteers. So with that, Holly, would you like to make any comments before we see if we can get a couple of questions out?
Sure. I think one of the most important criteria is really making a connection with those volunteers, sharing the vision of the chapter and of the organization overall to help them understand that what they're doing, what they're signing up for, is directly linked to our success. So that whole what's in it for me, that's so important. If someone comes to, if we have a prospective volunteer looking to spend some time with a group, definitely I can't stress enough how important it is that the role descriptions are written well and that there's a conversation for those people approaching, interested in volunteering, so that we make a match really with the work that needs to be done and those interests of the volunteer, so that they're going to be happy and feeling like they're performing and bringing success to the organization as a direct link to our goals and objectives.
Well, you know, you're absolutely right. I think one of the greatest motivators that we can have happens to be a success that we can celebrate, and we can only get success through volunteers. I'm going to ask Pam to say a few words, but before I do that, Kay, if you would put up slide number 17, okay, and number 17 under strategies for success, is that we want to make sure that we explain the benefits. And I think Holly did a good job of explaining some of those benefits just a few seconds ago. But we can enhance people's skills. You have a great opportunity to network some more. You will have complimentary attendance at some of our PMI events. There are volunteer-only events that we have to give back. Even though a volunteer doesn't really expect something in return, it is very important that we make you feel somewhat special. So we have to do things for you in the form of some kind of volunteer perks, and that's really important. You will have the opportunity to do some knowledge sharing. Not only will you be mentored and coached, but you will become a mentor and a coach. That you will get some PDUs out of this, and I have to tell you that it's a really good thing to have on your resume. It's a nice addition. So I think those are some key benefits. So Pam, any other comments before we see if we can get a few questions from the people that are online?
I think you went over a number of them, and I apologize I wasn't able to get on the webinar. No, I'd say it really gives you a chance also to take your project management methodology and learn from each other. We all have different backgrounds of where we've grown up in. We get to a point we think we're confident in our skills, and then all of a sudden life changes. We move, we get another job, we go another place, and it's almost like again, I know it's pushing really the LinkedIn piece of the organization, but it's the camaraderie that you get by coming to the regular meetings, by seeing the same people at the same meetings. There's events after the meetings. We really encourage you to come see what is out here, understanding you may not be able to make every meeting, but once you volunteer, you'll find there are people who you get to know and get to like, and oftentimes that's where it starts out. That you go to one event and you say, I'd love to go ahead and try to do this again. And if you have questions, certainly, about the commitments, any of the program managers can work with you. It's a flexible organization and a big organization, and that has a lot of opportunity. Back to you, Frank.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to ask Kay if you would put up the slide number 18. I'm just going to leave that up there. But those of you that are on the call, you have an opportunity to ask questions using the question box or the chat box. So I am unable to see that because of my situation with the technology. So I think that Holly may be able to see it. I know Kay might be able to see it also. But if you have any questions, there's two ways we can probably do this, Kay. If we can unmute the microphone, if somebody has a question, they can raise their hand, or you can simply send a question via the question box or chat box. So at this point, do we have any questions out there? Do we have anything that we can address or clarify?
There's some questions about the PMI, Professional Business Analyst, but I'm not sure you want to address that if we want to stay on topic right now. How about if we come back to that at the end once we kind of move off of the topic of volunteering?
Okay, I don't know that I can answer a lot of questions about the Professional Business Analyst other than I know that the Business Analyst position is getting a lot of attention. If you want to get a little bit more information about the Business Analyst, what the trends are, you take a look at PMI's Pulse of the Profession report for April of 2015, and you look at the previous Pulse of the Profession report, you will see that there's a lot of emphasis on the business analyst position and how the business analyst position and the project manager position are actually kind of merging to some extent, and a lot of shared responsibilities. So those of you who are interested in that certification, that actually is a pretty good move. It involves the understanding of working with customers and requirements, and I would definitely look into it in a little bit more detail. And since that question was raised, I'll put that on my list of things to do to find out more about that and get into more information to the chapter.
Thanks, Frank. And you asked to have slide 18 posted for viewing, and I'm sorry I don't have access to the slide numbers. Can you tell me the headline on that?
Okay. Are there any other questions?
None at this time.
Okay. Now I know that we kind of imposed a little bit on your personal time here, having a meeting at 6:30. Actually I had scheduled it for an hour just to be on the safe side. But I would like to know if there's anything else that you would be aware of or you'd like to know about. You can send certainly an email to myself, to Pam, or to Holly. Just to kind of make a few more closing remarks before we close out. Let's see. If you go to slide, Kay, if you go to slide number 21, it is entitled Risks and Liabilities. Okay, what we have to do here, and it's important for all volunteers to understand, is that we're going to have to try our best to get volunteers who have the qualifications to step into certain positions. Sometimes we run into situations where a volunteer oversteps their boundaries. Maybe they don't understand their position. Maybe they disagree with the direction of the chapter or something like that. And we have to be aware of all of that. And a lot of these things are explained up front in setting expectations. But if you think about it, let's make sure that all volunteers are aware of the bylaws, that we have to follow procedure and protocol, that we are a project management organization, which means that we focus on process, we focus on procedure, we focus on consistency and things like that. So it's important for all volunteers to be aware of the bylaws, the way we operate, and that there is protocol anytime that there's an issue. And we want to make sure that people have a really great experience. And we also make sure that they understand that, it is truly a commitment that requires a lot of collaboration, a lot of teamwork, and that in many cases you are being positioned and conditioned for a higher level role in the chapter as a leader. So those are some things that I just think are very important for you to be aware of. Okay? So if there are no other questions...
We do have a new question in from Roman asking what the major streams in volunteering opportunities are in PMI, the New York City chapter.
Okay, could you repeat that question, Kay?
Yes, what are the major streams in volunteering opportunities in PMI NYC?
Okay, I'm sorry, but I can't actually make that question out clearly, so I don't know what that is. Holly, if you can understand that question, could you answer it for me?
Okay, streams. I would interpret that possibly as types of roles, perhaps. We have the volunteer team role. We have on some teams assistant program manager, on some teams directors, and then onwards and upwards the board of directors, which is a number of VPs across those departments. And those departments you can find also on the organizational chart on the website. We have membership team, professional development team, which is a combination of programs and learning and development, that's training and workshops. We have the outreach team, which is a number of different programs from corporate to community to service, and growing those programs within outreach as well, educational. Those are the major areas. We also have our technology and marketing departments. So we're really, a full organization with multiple types of roles throughout. We like to team up and work on, you can call them projects together. Projects for the programs teams means executing events, planning, executing, and closing events. I hope that helped.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Any other questions out there that we can address?
Roman responded that did help. There was another comment that there is an upcoming PMI PBA boot camp that kind of circles back to the question there was earlier about some of the credentials. There is another question from Tisha that says, are there any materials that can be given to new volunteers defining a high-level view of what it means to volunteer with us?
Okay, yes, there is. There's quite a bit of documentation that the PMI GOC does have available, either in electronic format or in the form of brochures. I don't have the information right in front of me, but PMI recently put out some documentation on the roles of the leader, the volunteer leader, and also a role delineation study of volunteers. So what I would do is I'd take an action item here to obtain some of that literature, both in hard copy and in electronic format, and make that available either in the newsletter or post it on the website, and also make announcements at the chapter meetings what that information is that's available, so that you can review it and get a better picture of what is available from a volunteer perspective. Okay, any other questions out there?
No new questions that I see. Do you have any, Holly, that you're seeing that are new?
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I think that I just want to say thank you for joining. This was recorded. It was kind of informal, but it was really meant to reach out to the volunteers, and as Pam had mentioned several times in previous board meetings and discussions, let's make sure we're connecting with these volunteers that are waiting. I wanted to also make sure we connect with the volunteers that are actually doing, and let's look for ways to be creative together, come up with new opportunities. We want you to find the PMI experience to be extremely useful, valuable, and rewarding in many different areas. We want you to feel good about being part of it, and we would certainly need you to help us grow the chapter. So if you have any ideas that'll help us grow, any creative ways of doing things, just as an example, two things that happened recently. One was we had just a networking session back in March, I think it was, at a place called Butterfield 8. We had 49 people show up just to socialize. It was a wine and cheese kind of a setup. It was really a lot of fun. We had a little networking exercise using a bingo type of format. A lot of people really enjoyed that. And then we had a swing dancing networking session at I think it was called 346 Swing on 8th Avenue and 46th Street, I think, in Manhattan. And again, we had a good turnout there. It's something a little bit different. There's a spring mixer coming up where we can socialize there. So we're going to be doing things that are not just from an educational perspective, but from a socializing, get people out there to talk to each other, share information, maybe even find job opportunities through this more social networking. In the past, there have been talk about, maybe organizing a chapter internal competition like volleyball and softball and bowling and things like that. So we're looking at every opportunity to help to show that we're doing a lot of different things that'll touch on each of the different generations of project manager, from baby boomer to millennial. So these are the kinds of things that we are working on. We're trying to be as creative as possible, and we could certainly use your input and your suggestions. So feel free to send information via our Facebook, our LinkedIn group, and certainly at chapter meetings, and then via email. So with that, if there are no other questions, I'm just going to say thank you very much to all of you for joining. Thank you, Holly and Pam, for the continued enthusiasm. And we'll do these things more often so that we can reach out to people and let them know that we are listening and that we are committed as the chapter leadership to find ways to make this a meaningful experience for everyone. So, Kay, thank you very much for your last-minute technical support to help us get through this. And it is being recorded. If people need to look at it, listen to it, we'll make that available as soon as possible. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much, Holly, Pam, and everyone that's on the call.